Um, yeah, so my name is Laksa Mosque, and I'm speaking to you all from actually my home up at the Sea of Galilee in Israel, where the time now is 9 o'clock. I'll just go right to your question, Carlos. We are in the midst of vaccinating our population. We have already vaccinated about 1.8 million people. We have a population of about a little over 9 million. So that is what my math isn't great, but we're pretty much at 20, a little bit over 20%.
Great.
And it's obviously, amazing. It's truly amazing. And you have to understand, I mean, on one hand, we are only a little over 9 million people. So it's a bit easier. We're not dealing with 330 million people. But because we have a healthcare system that is a public healthcare system, that socialized medicine, and every Israeli is a member of one of four HMOs. So we have the infrastructure. We've had the infrastructure in place. And so when the medication comes in, it has where to go to, and the system's set up. So they already have your records. They already know how old you are. I mean, I got my phone call, whatever it was, about 2 weeks ago to come in on a certain time and a certain date to get vaccinated for round one. So we have that built in. It's probably the biggest plus of having this kind of a system. So, and I know that you have had already maybe over 6 million people vaccinated, and hopefully that distribution will, kick up, and most Americans will be vaccinated over the next, few months. To your question about tourism, at this point, we are still in the midst of a lockdown, actually. You're really not supposed to travel more than 1,000 meters from your home. All stores, except for essentials, are closed, and only certain businesses can remain open. And this will probably go on for the next week. And then maybe and schools are obviously happening at home. And so we're hopeful that we will open up gradually again, starting in another week or so. We don't know when our borders are going to open. There is some discussion that it will open to countries that are termed green countries in the not too foreseeable, not too distant future, but we don't know. And we don't yet have firm policies as to how tourists will be allowed to come in. There have been some papers that have been put out, but nothing is firm. But we do expect by the end of the first quarter that we will start to see a few tourists coming in, possibly from green countries. But again, we have to see how this variant also plays out, this new type of COVID-19 variant. So, it's anybody's guess at this point, but we're cautiously optimistic, and obviously getting vaccinated for all of us is a huge step forward. So I'm just going to, before we move on to the program, I just want to briefly tell you, first of all, thank you all for joining today, and let me just tell you a little bit about my company, Travelujah. We're based in Israel, as I mentioned, and we are the expert source in Holy Land travel. We've got about 1,000 pages of regularly refreshed content on our website. And people come to us because they're able to journey deeper. I think there's maybe Itamar, if you could possibly mute. There's some noise. Our mission is to connect people to Israel through travel, and we've been around for about 13 years. That's actually our bar mitzvah year this year. We're known for creating and operating very in-depth and meaningful group and private tours, and also for our outstanding customer service. If you see us on TripAdvisor, you'll see that we're 5-star rated. And in our effort to keep people connected to Israel, since COVID started about 10 months ago, we've obviously stopped all our tours and gave back all of our deposits and paid everybody who had tours that were coming up. They all received their money back. But since then, we've been curating virtual programs, and we've been doing this for many organizations like allisrael.com that I know many of you came tonight from the Israel Embassy, and as well as many, many private programs. And this Sunday program is a weekly program that we do for individuals that anybody can join. So I know that most of you are Zooming from the United States, and I know that you've all just experienced probably one of the most shocking and tragic weeks in US history. Here in Israel, I just want to say that we've all seen the images of the mob, we've seen the break-in, we've seen the chaos that ensued, and like you, we are deeply troubled, and we're saddened and frankly very shocked by what transpired. And I just want to state that up front. For Israelis, the United States, and your democratic system of government, mine as well, because I'm still American and Israeli, it's considered a beacon onto the world, and Israelis really respect that. Israel has a very deep relationship with the United States. We share your democratic values. We share strong spiritual ties, as you know. We have a very strong strategic alliance and commercial connections. And regardless of what opinions any person might have, we feel that, taking over the capital is against all of our shared values. And the US is our family, and many of your heroes are also ours. I'm not sure if you'll be surprised to learn that we also have a memorial to John F. Kennedy. We have one to Loretta Scott. We have a Loretta Scott King Forest. We also have a very impressive 911 memorial. It's the only 911 memorial that lists the names of all 3,000 people who perished in the 911 attack. So when the US grieves, we grieve. And our thoughts and our prayers go to all of you, your friends, your family, your community. We realize that between COVID and this Capitol insurrection, these are very dark days, but we've all seen dark days before, and we move through them with strength, and we find the light. So in this week's Torah portion, we're discussing Exodus. And as you know, in Exodus, the beginning of Exodus, the Israelites were suffering terribly. And they were living in Egypt as slaves, and their lives were also similarly very much filled with darkness. And only when they were in their lowest point did they find the power to believe. And they took the chance to follow Moses, and they left Egypt. So in these dark days, I just want to say that let us all remember that we all have the power for tikkun olam, to repair the world. And together we can change the world. Perhaps we can't end all evil and all suffering, but we can diminish it. And in the words of Rabbi Lord Sachs, who recently died in England, and he said that we might not be able to eradicate injustice, but we can certainly work hard to lessen injustices. We might not be able to abolish sickness, but we can certainly treat it, search for cures, and find vaccines. So I just want to hope that we all are able to reunite in our prayers for better days ahead. Yeah. And as for tonight, we are going to journey deeper into the holy city of Jerusalem and into the ancient city of David. And our special guest tonight is Oren Sapir. Oren is a trilingual guide. He's absolutely renowned for his knowledge of numerous archaeological sites of Jerusalem, including the city of David. And for more than 10 years, I believe he's been following the new discoveries in the city. He leads educational tours for teachers and for guides throughout excavation sites. So when you have questions, he's going to be making his presentation and speaking about the city of David. Please write your questions into the chat. We'll have a couple of different points during the program where we'll open up for questions, and of course at the end. And with that, I'm just very honored to bring you Oren Sapir. Oren?
Thank you very much, and thank you for all the warm words. I'll just quickly share my presentation and tell me if you can actually see it well. Lisa? Okay, very good.
Yep.
So good evening for me, early afternoon for most of you, I guess. And we're going into the new discoveries in the city of David. I have to admit, not all the new, but quite a lot of the new things, including things or sites and places that are still ongoing excavation, and therefore they're actually not even open to the public yet. I'm sure you'll have questions, and we also still have questions because we don't understand everything going on in these new places, but we'll start rolling into them and see how they take us through. We will start with a quick, brief understanding of what and where we're talking about, and for that we use our very good friend Google Earth. So this is, of course, the Mediterranean Sea, and we're going to the eastern edge of the Mediterranean Sea and to the land of Israel. You can already see Jerusalem marked at the center of the map, and we really dive into it, and I hope you can see the western wall in the upper center, and that's inside what we call today the Old City. But to say the truth, it's a little bit more complicated. What you see now is just a glimpse out of this. What is marked in red are the walls of the so-called Old City. Right now in yellow is the Western Wall and Western Wall Prayer Plaza, and in green, right at the top, is the Dome of the Rock on the Temple Mount. So everyone goes to the old city, but most of them don't notice that when they go there, they're actually outside the really old city. I'll make that complicated. The area now circled in this bluish oval shape is actually where the city of David is, where the city was actually born. So everything I'm going to be talking about in this presentation will take you into this space, mainly right outside the walls of the old city. So that's what we call today the city of David. And it's very interesting because if you'll leaf through tourism books from 100, 120 years ago, the beginning of the 20th century, no one will talk about this place. Everyone will send you to the Temple Mount, to the Western Wall, maybe to Jaffa Gate. It took a while for the archaeological and research system to actually acknowledge that the really ancient finds that were starting to be discovered in the 19th century are actually all circled in this small hill. Just to get the idea what I say small hill, it's a 5-minute walk in total. So here we dive in. What we will have as we go through are 2 bars, one on the bottom and one on the upper right that you'll see soon enough. The one on the bottom is the historical, archaeological, historical timeline. You'll see all these nice colors. We'll have them highlighted as we're talking about each and every period. And what you'll have at the upper right that you can see right now, I hope it fits well into your Zoom window, is the shape and size of the city and the location. That's that little star location of where we are talking about it right now. So we dive into the Middle Bronze Age, roughly 3,800 years back in time, the 18th century BC. In that period of time, what we have is a fortified city, and on its bottom edge in this nice painting, you can see a massive fortification that actually protects the Gihon Spring. The main tower discovered in excavation is circled now in yellow, and that same tower will be circled in yellow in a nice painting design that tries to help us out in the understanding what's going on here. And that's this. So you see the same tower right now. Lots of channels and pieces and lots of things going on. And what I'm interested in is something that started being discovered more than 20 years ago. And the excavation in this place is still ongoing. So every year they get a new theory and a new little thing that messes us totally up as tour guides. And we start with this massive stone wall. You can see the archaeologist that used to direct this excavation until about 7 years ago, Mr. Eli Shukron, with this massive 8-yard high wall that still stands as is in these huge, massive stones. This is actually right there. But what I'm focused on right now is a new excavation that started taking place a few years ago and still is working on trying to get a perfect, accurate date of what's going on here. Why? You see this massive fortification, the construction style is Middle Bronze Age. The many pottery vessels and lots of things thrown all around are Middle Bronze Age. But that doesn't mean the construction has to be from those days. And a new excavation taking place in these 2 tiny little oval shapes, the one on the right already finished and the one on the left is still ongoing, and we'll hop to that one soon enough, actually start offering a newer date from the first temple period. And that's why now if you look at the bottom bar, you'll see 2 periods of history actually highlighted, the Middle Bronze Age and the Iron Age, the first temple period, which means this massive fortification is in use for many, many, many centuries and renovated and changed throughout its history, or it started from one piece and then another one was added and then another one was added, and we're talking about some kind of a fortified evolution of adding more and more fortifications to the city. What we hope is that on the left circle, where it says exactly Hezekiah's, it has nothing to do with them at the moment, they're going to try to find another portion of the ancient city walls, and the moment that is in hand, we'll actually have a better understanding of where things are. Why am I telling you all this? Because not too far away from this massive fortress that protects the spring, and at the moment I won't care if it's its exact accurate date, right nearby, just a little bit up the hill, is a new excavation taking place. And that's where you see the circle around Area U and what is called the rock-cut tombs, or rock-cut rooms, sorry, not tombs, rooms. Area U is actually a very interesting series of rooms, all from the first temple period, found in very good detail, which means the floors, the kitchen utensils, everything there. And in one of those rooms, they found all those red dots actually circle something that might look quite black, I hope, on your screen. And these are ashes. Look at the bottom of the picture. You see all these smashed jugs, pottery. This is actually end of first temple period pottery smashed on the floor of a house. Everything went up in flames. One of the impressive, I have to admit, moments of the evidence of the destruction of Jerusalem about 2,600 years ago by the Babylonians. And this specific room, with many more next to it, are being actually excavated as we talk and trying to identify more and more of the little objects coming out of it. So one of the most important things is removing all the debris and all the ruins aside and sifting carefully through the small finds. And suddenly, interesting small objects. The size of this object that appeared, just to get the idea, the small size of this thing is about the tip of your thumb. This thing is a seal impression, and on it is a Hebrew name. But before we get to the name, I want you to notice the design. Nicely organized, almost symmetric, would say, and in between the upper row and the lower row of the writing, there's a nice decoration. This is something very, let's say, sophisticated, high society. And the name here is very interesting. The name is Achiav. Achav was the, maybe I'll say infamous, king of Israel, of the 10 tribes, the northern kingdom, about a century and a bit after David. So Achiav literally means the brother of the father, which might mean in, let's say, more metaphorical way, something like the brother or the connected to God. So actually finding a name that means exactly as Ahab, the king of Israel, is interesting to find it in Judah, in Jerusalem, the capital of the other kingdom. This is from at least a century after this Achiav's name. But the cool thing is the name is Achiav's father, Achiav, the son of Menachem. And Menachem is also a very famous name of kings from the northern tribes. And therefore, there is an interesting idea that maybe we have here newcomers that came from the northern tribes, as we are told in the days of Hezekiah, in the days of the destruction of the kingdom of Israel and its exile away by the Assyrians to who knows where. Many people stayed and remained behind at home or in their towns and villages. And Hezekiah says, come join me in Jerusalem. And apparently descendants of those exiled tribes, whoever remained behind and was possible to do so, actually joined into Judah. And these two names together might actually help us in identifying that. Nearby, many more seal impressions, even though shattered into pieces, as you can see on this person's palm. He's, by the way, a very good friend of mine and the director of this excavation. And in between his thumb and forefinger, you can see a small scarab-shaped seal, which is actually an Egyptian style that was used all over. So it doesn't have to come from Egypt, but this means there's a lot of administration taking place right in this place, not too far away from the city walls on one hand, and not too far away from the water source, the Gihon spring on the other. But we have some more. This is one type of administration. This is another type of administration. What you see here is 3 different seal impressions on jugs that were actually for produce. We don't know if it's wine, grapes, oil, wheat, no way to really know what exactly was put in all these, but these are seal impressions of the administration of the kingdom. And this specific spot actually takes us into understanding that the city of Jerusalem was one big administrative center, which means what? Usually we go to the city of David and you're taken to what is known as Area G, the administrative quarter with a royal area, where they found many seal impressions. But as the excavations are ongoing more and more and more, they actually found out these things are everywhere. In almost every new open excavation site, they find more and more of these seal impressions on little pieces of clay and on handles of jugs, which means the whole city was one huge administrative center for the kingdom. And you can find these finds in each and every corner and house. At least the question, do you want me to answer questions immediately already? Because I saw a few chat things thrown. Okay.
Yeah, I think we're okay. We've been answering them so far.
Fine. If there's something, just tell me, because I won't be able to open each and every one of them as I'm going.
Yeah.
And now from Area U, we're hopping one floor down to the rock cut room. And before we hop into them, I need to explain what's going on. We're on a slope, a very steep slope. So every, let's say, leveled out layer from antiquity where they built their homes is a little bit above the one that's a little bit down. So they excavated area U and were able to date all the buildings of the Iron Age, the first temple period. And the moment they jump one step down into rock cut rooms, they actually see they connect into one story, but from administration, we hop to something totally, totally. This is an overview of rock cut rooms. I have to say area U and this isn't open to the public yet. I don't know when it will be, but it isn't open to the public yet. You can see a series of really cut out of rock rooms. We start with the one that's totally to the left. And please notice this massive opening. This is actually a man-made small cave that was found sealed shut. So this doorway you see, imagine it's sealed shut with rocks. When they removed the rocks, they found inside lots of pottery vessels that were actually organized there, like some kind of eternal storage, put away and sealed up. I am very sorry because this wasn't open to the public yet. It isn't also published yet well. So I only have one picture of these funny objects, and I'm sorry, it's not a very sharp one. But this is actually a small incense altar. What they found there were incense objects and small objects that were used in cultic sites. And that was already an interesting thing because something very similar was found a few yards to the right, also scattered around. But we continue. Notice on the right, there's a little hole in the wall now with a blue circle. So we enlarge it. Here we go. And what you see right there is actually an olive press. That's where the beam of the olive press actually sat into the wall. You put weights on one end, and then the sacks with the, or baskets with the olives are squeezed and the oil flows out. One moment. I'll flip back. It's a tiny space, which means what? This isn't an industrial zone where you make olive oil for many people. It isn't something private for one person. It's something weird in the middle. But there's olive oil produced in this spot. We continue back to our main overview, and in the central room, that's a little bit annoyingly with this beam right in front of your face, this was discovered. They actually discovered a standing stone. Here I used the flash to get a better picture so it looks quite bright. It's actually a piece of limestone standing on its wrong side, which means on its narrow side. To hold it, you can see there's like a ring of smaller stones that hold it up. This is something, I won't say very rare, but not very common. These standing stones are known, for example, at the gate of the city of Dan in the north of Israel, or in a few more locations. This is always something cultic, religious, temple-like, offering-like space, which means what we have here is incense altars, olive oil, and a standing stone. But that's not it. We have one more thing that you can't see in the picture because it's just a piece of stone. It's actually part of the natural rock spot. But only when you use a reconstruction of this whole thing, you can get a better understanding. But before we get to that, take a look at this funny thing. Here you see Eli Shukron, that actually was, again, the director of the excavation until 7 years ago, and was the one that discovered these before he retired from excavation. And you see these funny V-shapes carved into the stone. No one knows what they are. But the moment you see these and see all the other things, we're talking about something cultic. And here's the reconstruction. Going from left to right. On the left, you see the V shape and the little room at the back. You can see it's half of its opening entrance into where the incense altars were put behind. The next room is where you see that standing stone. One to the right, you see a priest offering an offering on a little booth, or actually, I should say, on a little altar. The only thing we have of that altar is just the rock scarp 5-6 inches high. That's it. Here in the reconstruction, the artist added some construction above it. And to the right, the olive press. If we check many of the cultic ways of living in antiquity, biblical, Jewish, Canaanite, and on, you'll see lots of things that go together. Incense everywhere, olive oil or any type of oil that is used for anointing, or a stone or a holy site or anything, and some place for offerings. If we go to book of Genesis, we have that Jacob, leaving the land of Canaan towards Haran as he's fleeing from his brother Esau. He actually sleeps somewhere, and in the morning, he takes a stone that was used as a cushion or something like that, and flips it over, puts it up, and anoints it with oil, actually marking it as a holy important spot because of his dream of the angels that go up and down the ladder that he received during that night. So this is something cultic, but from when is it? On purpose, I started in area U because that helps us out. Just one floor up, not in the painting. What you have is a series of structures that their walls connect to the walls of this structure, the rock cut rooms and the structures that are connected to it, which means this is all for a part of the same story, and that is what we call the middle of the Iron Age or the First Temple period. But the most interesting thing here is that this cultic site, this tiny little temple, which is just a temple, was totally removed and concealed from the eyes. We're told in the book of Kings that he, Hezekiah, removed the high places and broke the pillars and cut down the Asherah. The Asherah is some kind of idol worship. And he broke in pieces the brazen serpent that Moses had made, which became an idol as well for the people, the children of Israel. And they even received a name, Nehushtan, and Nechoshet is a copper or bronze. So Hezekiah, the king, removed many of the altars and pillars and all sorts of religious sites that part of them are idolatry, but part of them are not. In a few places throughout the land of Judah, we actually have archaeological evidence of small temples removed, taken apart, hidden, covered up with dirt, so no one will use them anymore. And the dirt, usually what happens in archaeology, you have all the mess thrown in. The most ancient piece of dirt doesn't help me. What I'm looking for is the newest piece of pottery, later on coins or anything. So the most ancient, the newest pottery discovered in this area is from roughly Hezekiah's days, and we can understand that this was all taken out of order, concealed, not smashed to pieces, covered up, removed, and hidden. So no one will know, and no one will use it anymore. Or in how we can see it, the king Hezekiah, that in his days, as I mentioned before, many people come also from the 10 tribes into the land of Judah and Jerusalem. What we actually have here is that in his days, this small temple, which was just one, we know several more in the land of Judah from that time. One outside Jerusalem to the west in Motzah, another one apparently in Lachish, in Sheva, Beersheba today, in Arad, in many sites. We have these temples. They are all hidden, concealed, and taken apart. So people will focus on the only temple, one on Mount Moriah in Jerusalem. So this fact actually gives us the a spot of such a temple. I see one question about the standing stone. Can it be a pillar? Very good question. I do not know. I wish I knew. But when we look at the options, this could be, even though pillars are usually much more formidable in size and not something quite small, but definitely a standing stone speaks of something cool.
Owen, hi. Owen, I'll just say, is a good friend of mine, and actually he was there with you in this underground excavations about a year ago or a year and a half ago. And I will just repeat that, you know, what you just said. A part of this reformation was to cancel all the little temples. Okay, this is something that in some of you that have been with us in Arad, for example, I just want you to remember that we talked about these ancient temples in other places that were canceled during this reformation that Owen was just talking about. And so by all means, this won't be a part of the temple. Some of you asked if the vessels would be used or something. No, this is of course a canceled temple, and the one that we will, I mean, the one that we're praying for its reconstruction is the one on Mount Moriah, where the Golden Dome is. This is again the location of the temple, according to all the traditions, etc. Everything you just saw, you have to understand that if you've been to Israel and been to the city of David, this is under your feet. This is something that you actually walked underneath it. It was just underneath you and you were not aware of it, but it's just there. So it's a tiny hill, like Owen said, 5 minutes walk. And there is so much going on. So you go 10 meters here, 10 meters there, there's like a whole world. So thank you, Owen, for this presentation. It's fantastic.
Thank you, Itamar.
Thanks.
We hop to our next stop, flying a little bit north, right outside the edge of what we call today the City of David, but still deep in the Iron Age in the First Temple period. What was discovered here in 2 phases of excavation, a little bit more than 20 years apart, end of the 1980s and 2009-10, by Dr. Eilat Mazar. She found a gatehouse, and this is actually the walkway where people will enter through the gate and with guard rooms on the side. And this structure is part of an administrative courtyard with several buildings nearby. I'm going to focus on the one at the back of this picture. Maybe you can see 3 little roundish blobs. So we'll focus on them and get to them in a moment. But maybe you've seen this design before. This is a broken piece of a capital, a small capital, very, very common from the First Temple period that was found in the rubble. We don't know from what building. And this type of capital is very common in administrative structures. And just lately, 3 more of them were discovered in southern Jerusalem in another administrative structure from the First Temple period. They start becoming, as we can call, common. But what was their exact location, we don't know because it was found in rubble. But I'm interested in a building that was found almost intact. See the 3 blobs? These are actually replicas, of course, of huge, I'm really saying huge jars that were for something to be put in them, and each and every one of them was easily accessible in the building. You see 3 replicas here, but actually 12 were found throughout the room along its walls. The size of this thing, when I say huge, I mean it. This is the size of those things. You can fit a person inside, and on a few of them there was even something written or engraved. On one of them, I hope you can see, after one on the right, there's a tree, which is actually a palm tree. A palm tree, which means whatever was inside it was maybe some kind of dates or even date juice, which we usually call silan, or maybe something like that. And this building that's just next to the gatehouse gives the impression of something that has to do with giving taxes. So you enter the city, immediately you pass the whatever taxes into the city administration. So in the moment they found in another one of the jugs, a broken inscription, and you see it at the bottom a little bit clearer, it actually has only 6 letters. The first 3 are lesal, belonging or dedicated to the minister, and then 3 letters that form the beginning of what apparently is ha'ofim, the baker. So you of course have the bakers that need to receive the wheat and a lot more for making bread, and apparently this was one of the types of taxes that a person would actually bring into the city. So this is an administrative building right next to the gates. People pass things in, and if the administration works well, they of course write everything down and mark it in their books. And sometimes you need to open the books and check what's written in documentation. And what you do is you throw all the garbage outside the window. The good thing about this is the window of this building was actually right on the city walls. So we just hop now outside and we can see the city walls from the outside. And in this exact spot, they found more than 30 seal impressions that were just thrown out. Here you see 2 of them. These aren't the 2 important ones, it's just an example to get the idea of lots of seal impressions. I'm interested in the one on the right. You notice it's broken, which means they actually opened the document or the stack that was sealed and threw it out, checked what its content was. So in this dump site where they threw lots of things out, many more things were found. And that takes me to overview. So you have the gatehouse on the left, the royal bakery, if it really is a bakery, and the fortification, the towers. So right outside those structures, an amazing seal impression was discovered in 2009. It was a little bit unlucky because it took about 5 years to understand what we're looking at. Because the moment they read this, they were able to read almost each and every letter, but didn't make a lot of sense because there were a few letters they didn't understand what they're doing. So they managed to read the first letters, Lechiz, belong to his, and then Yahu, which is Jeremiah, is Isaiah. All of them have the God name at the end. And then a few letters that made no sense, and Malkiyahu. But then about 4 years later, one of the archaeologists that was working on this excavation received a drawer full of all these 30-something seal impressions and used a microscope to get a better look. And she noticed, I hope you'll be able to see this, and we'll even try to annotate it, but I'm not sure you can see it so well in any picture. Right here, between this letter And this letter, right here, there's a dot. It's a little bit hard to see, I have to admit. And that dot is the ancient space bar. It means that these are two separate words. And the first three letters form the word melech, king. And the next three are actually yud, hey, and apparently a broken dalet, which actually begins the word Yehuda, Judea, which means what we actually have here is the seal impression of Hezekiah, the son of Ahaz, king of Judah. And that's the only king of Judah that his name was ever found in the excavations of Jerusalem. A seal impression with very, very fancy decorations discovered right there in the rubble, thrown out. And when this was discovered, they actually understood they're holding the most, maybe the most important archaeological find ever discovered that you can fit on the palm of your hand, a tiny seal impression of Hezekiah, the king of Judah. 3 years later, the excavation continues just a few yards up north, and several more seal impressions come to view, including this one. Please notice it is broken. And what you can see at the top, it's easier to look at the painting on the right, you just see it much better. You can see a tail and 3 legs of some animal, which was something quite common that they put a painting of an animal, and then letters that form the name Isaiah. The cool thing about the Isaiah one is that we have a third row, and on the third row you can see 3 letters that form the beginning of the word prophet, without a very important letter, and that's the aleph at the end. And immediately they say, wait a minute, right next to Hezekiah is his contemporary of time, the prophet Isaiah. Couldn't be any better. And most researchers, unfortunately, I'm really, really sorry, say it's really weird that someone will write on his seal, I'm a prophet, especially prophets that were attacked and not always had an easy time. Isaiah was a little bit better than others, but it seems a little bit weird. In addition, that there's no real room in what we have remainder of the third row to fit so easily as they try to do in this design another letter, the aleph that's there in blue. And therefore, most researchers actually offer that this guy is Isaiah from the city of Nov, and therefore he's Isaiah the Novi. And that's what it says here. Maybe it's the prophet, maybe it's someone else. But here we have another glimpse into the administration of Jerusalem from the First Temple period. So this is just a little bit north. You can see, if you look at the left once more at the map, you'll see there's a road. It says Ophel on it, running around, and the city of David just below that road, and the Temple Mount is a little bit up beyond this map. So that's just a portion of the First Temple period finds that are actually being discovered on this area. Unlike what I showed you before, this area is actually accessible to the public, even though many, many stairs to reach it. But you can actually see quite a lot of these spaces today. We jump far away.
Owen, maybe
Yes.
some of them have been to the Southern Steps in Davidson Center. So
okay.
I'll just say, guys, you. Yeah.
This, if you've been to the Davidson Center, to the southern steps of the Temple Mount, this is a few-minute walk down the stairs from that spot eastward, let's say. Again, accessible, it's open in normal days, not lockdown times, and but not as known as the rest of that specific site.
Oren, the insect that is on the seal at the bottom, is any particular meaning? Is it a,
okay,
what is it? Or is it an owl? Yes.
Let's start with the thing on the right. The thing that looks like a cross with the hook on his head is actually Ankh. The Ankh is the Egyptian symbol of life, or even eternal life. And what looks like an insect, believe it or not, it is a sun. A sun disk. Notice the sun rays going up and down. It's a sun disk. It's actually a winged sun disk. In the ancient world, it's correct also in Eastern world, which means let's go to Assyria and Babylonia, and definitely in Egypt as well. A winged sun usually means God protects me, especially in the Egyptian world when God was the sun, or meaning the main God of the way of their life. So if we take these two symbols together, it means God protects me and gives me life. And the good question is, why should Hezekiah put such a thing on his personal seal? One of the explanations, even though I can't be sure it's 100% accurate, opening 2 Kings chapter 20, we are told that Hezekiah became sick. And Isaiah the prophet comes to him and says, "You're going to die." Isaiah turns around, starts leaving the room. Hezekiah turns around, faces the wall, and prays to God, "Keep me alive." Isaiah leaves to the next room and receives a prophecy. "Go back, tell Hezekiah, I received his prayer and he will live. And this will be the symbol that I received his prayer, that the sun will shift and therefore the shadows will shift dramatically, much, much faster than the regular time. And then with the symbol of sunlight, he receives life." If that's correct, it's really cool. Unfortunately, I can't be sure about that.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Hopping hundreds of years later, as you can see, we hopped on the timeline to the Roman era, to the end of the Second Temple period, to the southern edge of the city of David. And here we join the visitors coming from far and wide to the city. And what a researcher in Bar Ilan University called Omri Abadi, he's actually handing his PhD, I hope in the coming few weeks, and he's dealing with the roads to the city, the access to the city. And he claims that one of the roads actually went down this valley, coming from the west, going into the valley, and actually reaching the southern edge of the city and entering at a southern gate that is known, and immediately dipping into the pool of Siloam, known in Hebrew as the Shiloach pool. These stairs are open to the public and have been known since 15 years ago already. And these stairs are from the end of the Second Temple period, the big, big, massive pool that actually most of it is where the trees are on the left and even further on. A massive open space filled up with water. And the cool thing is that we don't need to only imagine it, we can see it. This happened winter 2005, right after the excavation. I have to admit what happened was this. It rained and rained and rained, and the drainage system of modern Jerusalem just couldn't hold it any longer. And the whole area, which is at the bottom of the city, got flooded and filled up with water. So this is the pool of Siloam, or pool of Shiloach, as it's known in Hebrew, at the southern edge of the city. And what Omri Abadi claims is that people actually entered and might have dipped directly in here, a little bit of laundry, getting things organized on their way to their visit into Jerusalem. So from this spot, we start climbing up the main access road of the city of Jerusalem. But to do that, we need to read the Mishnah. What is the Mishnah? The Mishnah is the Jewish law edited after the destruction of the Second Temple, but giving us information also from the time before. All are obligated in the appearance. Appearance means appearing at the temple, offering a sacrifice, except for a long list of all those that don't have to come for different reasons, or because they can't walk, they have different disabilities, or because they are slaves, or because they're women that aren't obligated in coming, even though many of them came, or a minor. And the minor is what I'm going to be interested in. Because then there's a little bit of debate, who has the status of a minor? Who? And they give two options, as they like to do. Usually two options is the thing. Any child who is unable to ride on his father's shoulders and ascend from Jerusalem to the Temple Mount, that's what Beit Shammai, one house of scholars, says. The other house says, a child who is unable to hold his father's hand and ascend on foot. What's the difference? Difference is, am I being carried as a child, or am I walking with my own 2 feet? Of course, the difference is also the age of the child, because a child that can sit on the father's shoulders, riding the shoulders, could be a year-old baby. And that's it, being taken along. But on the other hand, a child that walks on foot, that means he's 6, 7, 8, maybe even more year-old child that can walk it on his own. And of course, the question is, reading this Mishnah, there's a problem. Ascend from Jerusalem to the Temple Mount. What you all need to ask me right now is, wait a minute, the Temple Mount is inside Jerusalem. This is a mess. And that also bothered the Talmud. The Talmud is actually the commentary that comes later on, and I'm actually going to the Yerushalmi, the Jerusalem Talmud. That's actually not from Jerusalem, it's from the Galilee, to say the truth, but that's how it's nicknamed. And they, of course, ask the question, where do you measure from? What does it mean from Jerusalem to Temple Mount? Do you start from the walls? Do you start from the houses? Shmuel, one of the scholars, actually says it's from the Shiloach. And the Shiloach is inside the city, which means the physical test is, can the father carry his son on his shoulders, or can this child hold his father's hand and start climbing up from the rock bottom edge of the city to the center, to the Temple Mount? Which means, here we have in this painting both options, the child on his father's shoulders, and the child holding of course, here a lamb, but in moment holding his father's hand to climb up. This painting has been standing there for many years. But from this moment on, as we climb up, this spot isn't open to the public yet. Climbing up these amazing stairs of Pilgrims Road, an ascent, a massive, impressive street that climbs up the central valley of Jerusalem, also known as the Tyropean Valley in the Second Temple period, that climbs all the way up from the southern edge near the Shiloh pool all the way to the Temple Mount. There are actually several small streets that branch and fork and connect. And on the side of the street, you'll be able to do shopping. What you see here is a picture taken from the shop towards the street during the excavation. So the cobblestones of the streets are actually now covered up with all the dirt being removed. But please notice this specific shop is carved out of stone, which means they really carved out the edge of the hill just above the street. And 3 of these shops were found one next to each other at the bottom near the pool, and more structures were found along the street further up, as we will see. So we climb up, and in between the ruins, one day, this archaeologist, Nachshon Zanton is his name, encounters a pile of little round boulders. Just picking it up, he understands these are ballista stones. Small ones, not the massive big ones, telling us of the moments of the destruction of the attack, the Roman attack upon Jerusalem, and its destruction, summer year 70, almost 2,000 years ago. So many of these stones were rolling around the street, discovered on top of it. And here we go. Just to get the feeling of the ascent, you can start climbing up, and notice, I hope you see it well, the side of the street just on the left, and many, many stairs. Just look how amazingly built this thing is. Please notice how well organized, so amazingly still standing are these stones from 2,000 years ago, almost unaffected by any destruction whatsoever. And at the middle of the street, they suddenly found something interesting that they built a box around it. So we need to open the box. Here we go. We open the box. And what do you see inside? Hard to identify, but I'll tell you, this is ashes. On the street, they found many, many pieces of wood that were burnt. This specific piece was so crumbling that they couldn't even pick it up. So a part of it just remained there, and they built a box around it so it won't keep on flying around away. And they took another piece of the same wood that they were able to pick up and took it to be checked. And what they were interested in isn't its date, because dating of the street is so simple by the amount of coins and pottery vessels and everything. So carbon-14 isn't important here. They want to find out, what type of tree is this from? They found all sorts of trees. Pine trees, which, by the way, that's what my name means. Oren in Hebrew is a pine tree. And they also found pieces of olive trees and all sorts of other locals. But this was impressive, because this was a palm tree. A massive log made out of a palm tree trunk that actually burned on the floor of the street. And apparently was something on the street or just off one of the structures falling down, collapsing onto the street, telling us of the destruction of the city. They actually went into research of checking all the different types of wooden pieces discovered and getting an idea of what type of forest would be cut down to be used for construction in Jerusalem in those days.
Oren,
Sure.
can you speak a little bit, like, what is the length of this street? You said it starts at Shiloh's pool, the pool Siloam, and it goes up to where exactly? And how far of a distance is that, and how long does it take to walk?
Okay, so we'll get into it. So the street itself actually starts at the southern gate. From there, there's an option to hop down a little bit into the Shiloh pool, or immediately embark onto the street and start climbing up the stairs. Out of this total of something like 600 yards going up in quite an incline up towards the Temple Mount. To get to the foot of the Temple Mount, the southwestern corner of the Temple Mount that we'll see a picture of later on. And this street, at the moment, excavation has discovered original cobblestones, something like 120 yards, still standing, intact, sometimes slightly damaged, but still standing, and another several dozen yards of destroyed, a space where the street was there but doesn't exist anymore. because its stones were or crushed or robbed or taken away by who knows why and who knows when, sometime during the way. So a total of something like 600 yards of a massive street. And when I say massive, we need to actually get to what's hiding underneath it, and that's our next slide. Just 2 yards up from where that little box with ashes is, you can see this slab of stone. On purpose, my hand is there, so you can get the size, basically. And you see a stone with 2 holes through it. This is actually a manhole cover, which means if I'll put a metal ring into those 2 holes, put a crowbar in and pick it up, I'll pry it open and actually be able to look into the drainage channel that's right underneath the street. And the discovery of the street actually started from the drainage system that was discovered by accident in 2006. Portions of this drainage system have been known since the 19th century, but actually being able to connect them all together, that's how I can tell you 600 yards. Because today, most of this drainage channel has been already cleaned up and open to the public, and you can walk several portions of this all the way up towards the Temple Mount, even though the street wasn't excavated as much. What was discovered in here? Loads of stuff. Lots of coins and lots of pottery. I have to admit, a few years ago, as I was walking in this drainage channel, leading a group, I suddenly noticed a coin on the floor. You assume, it's a coin that fell out of some tourist's pocket, but the moment I bent down and picked it up, I noticed it's a Second Temple period coin, a little bronze penny. So I handed it to the archaeologist in charge and told her where I found it, because these things just come up as time passes by. So not only coins, but also lots of interesting objects. For example, what you see right here in front of you. You can see the centimeter of size on the bottom just to get the idea how small this tiny object is. It's a piece of clay. And as you can see, the back looks like a pinched piece, which means you can actually hold onto it or attach it to something. And at the top, you see the 6 letters that were engraved into the seal and actually printed onto the seal impression. You see that form 2 words that apparently need to be translated pure for God, which means what? Whatever this was attached for was pure and therefore allowed, halachically by Jewish law, to enter the temple area. The moment they go through the gate, they tear the little piece off and throw it away, and it rolls into the drainage channel and gets stuck in the mud. What you see here is a very interesting piece of stone. And just to get the idea, imagine it's about the size of the palm of your hand. That's basically the size, and it has something engraved on it. It's a menorah, the temple candelabra. But if you look carefully, you'll notice there are only 5 branches and not 7 as we are used to seeing this. The moment this was discovered, the archaeologist said, uh-oh, what's wrong here? The temple menorah only has 5. So they asked someone that really knows a little bit about ancient decorations, said, oh, that's okay. We have a few of these. The majority have 7. But now look carefully at it, and you'll notice that the branches that branch off the central stem don't leave at the exact same spot. They're a little bit missed out. And the description we have is that they're identical. They always branch off. Every couple goes out from the same exact spot. And therefore, whoever made this failed a little bit and wasn't very happy. So he was disappointed with his painting and threw it away. And he never completed this specific painting. We have a few more that are a little bit better discovered. But then we get to this amazing thing. What you're looking at is a sword. Imagine it's about the size of a foot and a half in size. And this is an official Roman army sword found broken into 2 pieces in the drainage channel. It's hard to know if this arrived here by someone hiding here, as we have descriptions of people hiding because the Romans are approaching and breaking into the city in the drainage channel, or this was actually brought by a Roman soldier breaking into the drainage channel, looking for people that are hiding from their forces. And this was left there behind. The most amazing find, and I think the smallest of them all, is this. What you see? Yes?
No, sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead.
What you see right here is a golden bell, a tiny golden bell. Amazingly well ornamented. It apparently was connected onto someone's piece of clothing or a necklace or something. And actually, when they shook it, there's something inside that, a little clapper that can ring the bell. We know the high priest had golden bells and pomegranates on the fringes of his overcoat. I can't promise you this is one of them, but if it is, that really isn't. So this pilgrimage road is where lots of people walk and they lose lots of things falling out of their pockets, rolling around. It's a massive marketplace street. Imagine it's a street wide enough for cars today, if it were possible, to go both ways. It's about 8-9 yards thick with quite a lot of space. And as we continue climbing up, we will reach on the right-hand side, the eastern side of the road, this funny staircase. This staircase leads to nothing. 4 steps from the street that lead to nothing. There's a building there, no doorway, nothing. So this is actually a stand a little bit higher up from the street, about half the way up from the southern edge to the Temple Mounts. We're about 300 yards up north from where we started. And this thing is maybe where someone can stand and announce announcements, or maybe where the king or ruler will come and have some gathering, any type of location that people focus on and join in, just a little bit elevated from the crowd. And then I can, of course, read my announcements in the name of the king, hear ye, or something like that. They're still trying to find out what's going on and what this thing was used for. But we have actually a parallel in the Greco-Roman world in the area of Turkey of something like this in the middle of a marketplace street. Just a little bit now, and we can see the street again. Please imagine the bright sky above your heads. The excavation just looks like this because they're working in closed spaces, discovering these amazing stairs. But let's hop a little bit to the right, which means let's stand on the edge of the street. You can see the little ledge and the structures that are nearby. And in this structure, just to the right, they found a ritual bath in Hebrew, mikveh tahara, which was something very common in private homes, say in almost every private home of the end of the Second Temple period. People had these at home. And on the stairs going down into this specific mikveh ritual bath, a silver ring with a gem in it was left behind. So I can joke that as someone was going into the mikveh, into the ritual bath, it's traditional that you go without anything that might not allow the water touch your body, which means you'll take your ring off, put it aside, and someone did that and never came to pick up the ring, and it was left behind. We continue climbing the street, but in a few yards up, we don't have it anymore. It's destroyed and crushed, and no remains of it were discovered. As the excavation is still ongoing, maybe one day they'll find more, I hope so. But this, as I said, eventually will reach the foot of the Temple Mount. And what you see in front of you is the southwestern corner of the Temple Mount. Just along this corner, the continuation of this massive fancy street is known in the Davidson Center near the southern wall excavation. And exactly at the upper right of the picture, you can see the dome of the Laksa Mosque on the southern wall. So this street would reach all the way up here. And in this area was found damaged, crushed, smashed, and destroyed by tons of stone that fell on it from above and smashed it. So this is a portion of that pilgrimage road from the end of the Second Temple period, just at the eve of the Roman destruction, covered up by the ruins of the shops and structures and residential homes that were on either side that just fell onto it and covered it up and left the cobblestones still in amazingly perfect shape.
Wow.
Our last hop into new excavations, we're going just slightly south. I noticed someone before asked if this is the Givanti Parking Lot, so that's where we're going right now. The Givanti Parking Lot is actually a very important excavation, and for me, it's almost the most important excavation because it was 2003, February 2003, almost 18 years ago. I myself participated in the first season as a student in the excavation and discovered a few interesting things for me that aren't very interesting for research, unlike what I'm going to take you into. So this is a picture overlooking the Givanti Parking Lot, but just a moment, we need to understand where it is. We took the main marketplace street, the Pilgrimage Road up. So the Pilgrimage Road passes, or I should say passed, apparently it's totally destroyed in this area, exactly beyond the far end of this picture, which means the upper left, that's where that street was. So this is in the Central Valley, in the Tyrolean Valley, and just lining the edge of the city of David at deep, falling into it. Why is that important? Because if we have a hilltop, things roll off of it. But in a valley, things just fill up and fill up. So in this excavation, many, many layers, I think they counted to 14 till now. Maybe there's another one still hiding. From the newest is from the Middle Ages, about 1,000 years ago, and the most ancient dates almost back to 3,000 years ago. And we'll start with the Iron Age, the first people here to find, So that's right in the drop center of the picture in front of you. So we zoom in and zoom deeper in, and we can see a structure still standing. Please notice these two portions. One big piece of stone that is actually a doorway, another one, nice organized stones that form a wall, and in between them you see the debris, which is actually the collapse of the floor that was above this into this structure. This structure was actually found really damaged and destroyed. So here we hop into it. You can see the stones I showed you. You can see the two columns, pillars standing that form a nice doorway, the debris filling up, and the beginning of the next room, that nice wall. We're gonna just dive in between those two pillars into that room in the dark, and this is what we see. What am I showing you? You see all those funny labels? Those labels are actually marking of locations where in the excavation they took segments of ashes. Now look carefully. Actually, I didn't even circle all of them. All these black blobs of fire. This is actually the debris of the upper floor that went up in flames and collapsed into this room, crushed it. Across the wall, across, look at this layer of ash, which teaches us of a moment of fire, making this building go up in flames. In this excavation, in these structures, in this building, in these rooms, from the end of the First Temple period, they found what you might already be quite used to. Seal impressions and seals. Here you see two stone seals, very nice. The one at the one that's a little bit more darker in color and brighter colored letters is very rare, and I'll tell you why. It is a seal of a woman. Not very common to have some women that is some administrative role that will be able to actually administrative role that can sign documentation, but that's what you see right here. Another piece of stone that was very weird when they found it, but the moment they brought it to an expert of decoration, immediately said, hey, you're looking at another broken piece of the famous capitals of the First Temple period administrative structures. So we're continuing in the city center, the big center of the Kingdom of Judah, and a few more. Another seal, and the most important one, a seal impression. Amazingly fine letters. This forms the name Natan Melech, servant or slave, not really slave, more servant or worker of the king. And this Natan Melech is identified as this person, 2 Kings 23. And he, the king Josiah, took away the horses that the kings of Judah had given to the son. You might feel a little bit, hey, I've talked about this before. Hezekiah got rid of all those altars and things. So did the king a few generations later get rid of lots of idolatry. So the horses that have to do with the son at the entrance of the house of God, at the entrance of the temple, and by the chamber of Natan Melech, the official, the officer. So maybe it's the same guy. I don't know if this is his chamber, but this is very rare to find someone we might even identify from biblical times, from the First Temple period, in between the ruins. Till today, in the city of David in Jerusalem, we have 5 of these. 5 names that were discovered that we can say, hey, we know this guy. I showed you Hezekiah before. There are 3 more that I didn't mention, and here we have 1 more. So this is the Iron Age. Let's hop up a little bit. We go to the Hellenistic period, when the city is still small, and from that period, they found a few structures in this area that might have actually been outside the city walls, and in one of them, this amazing tiny dragon-like earring. If anyone wants to try it out, we're still missing the other one in the pair. We don't know where it is, but here we have a tiny golden decoration, ornament that apparently was used as an earring into someone's ear in between the rooms. But from the Hellenistic period, we have here something that's really impressive. And for that, I'm taking you to the book of Maccabees. In the year 143 of the Syrian kingdom, as Antiochus was leading his powerful army home, he attacked Jerusalem. He's actually leaving a war in Egypt. He lost, let's say the truth, but okay. And he attacked Jerusalem, walked arrogantly right into the Jerusalem temple and took the gold altar, the lampstand, and everything. He's actually coming, taking over Jerusalem. There's a small civil war, and then shortly after, he ordered his army to build a fortress, an acropolis, we'll see that in a moment, in Jerusalem, and put up high, thick walls and strong towers. There they stationed some Jewish troops who had rejected God's law. They became more Hellenized, more Greek. They stored weapons and everything in that fortress. And we go to the last paragraph. The soldiers in the fortress attacked the temple and never stopped doing horrible things to Israel. They killed innocent people all around the temple, and they made it unfit as a place of worship. Everyone ran away from Jerusalem. The city is being deserted by the Jews because of this massive fortress that just doesn't let people reach the temple. In Greek, it's akra. And by the way, in Hebrew, it's chakra. They pronounce the letter a little bit differently. And we know akra from the Acropolis in Athens. It's actually the high, important area, which means this would be in a high location. But interestingly enough, when we read all the sources, they mention that this is happening in the city of David, which is actually a low place. So maybe they mean the high spot of the low place, which means the top of the hill of the city of David. Why am I telling you all this? Here we go. This picture was taken in January 2013. And when I took this picture, I overlooked the excavation from the north. And I had no idea I'm taking a picture of something very, very important. What is that thing? Close up. See this funny triangle? I had no idea what it is. And actually, as this picture was being taken, the archaeologists had no idea what it was, but they understood it's some element. So they started digging around it and around it and around it, cleaning up, and slowly discovering that this is a pile of debris and rocks and dirt and lots of pottery vessels and coins that someone put in an organized way, in a triangulish organized way. Later on, they found out that this thing touches a piece of a fortification. Now we're flipping, looking from the south. The fortification is this thing in the blue rectangular lines. Just a little bit west into the valley, there's another wall that actually supports the triangle. So what is that triangle? These are layers of dirt and rocks, and as I said, lots of other things that were organized, pounded on in a way that will actually form a ramp that will make it hard for an enemy to approach the city walls. It's not an easy ramp. It's actually in a quite annoying angle. Back from the north, here you see the different layers of this element. They call it a glacis. And you can see that each and every layer is labeled. Their colors and their numbers. They started labeling each and every one, and they found out that this was all put in a very, very short period of time, really organized. And then they started retrieving all the different finds from above this thing, from in between, and found a few interesting things. For example, they found these. You're looking at arrowheads and slingshot bullets. Now let's close up at that slingshot bullet. Can you notice something on it? This thing's a trident. What's a trident a symbol of? Anyone want to give a try? I was talking too much and didn't ask any questions yet.
Neptune?
Oh, Neptune, or Neptune is in the Roman world. We're in the Hellenistic period. This would actually be Neptune's forefather, Poseidon.
Poseidon, right.
Okay, trident. So whoever shoots this thing is Hellenized or Hellenistic in his culture. I am very sorry, I do not have a picture of what I'm going to say right now. But if you flip that little slingshot bullet around, you'll see a hand holding lightning. And that is Zeus. So whoever shoots this ammunition, his world, his background, religious and cultural background is the Greek Hellenistic world. And therefore, if we read again into what I just showed you before in the book of Maccabees, we can actually identify that there's a battleground, a battlefield taking place right here in the Hellenistic period, when we have Greek or Greek cultured soldiers standing in the city. And if there's a fortification right here, this might actually be a portion of that Accra at the top of the city of David. I have to admit that not all archaeologists agree with this. I have to actually admit that a minority said yes, and the majority says, let's give it some more time. This just discovered in the last 4 or 5 years. But if we're correct, that takes me to the same book of Maccabees, just several chapters later, when this place will be taken. And when it will be taken, it will be demolished. And then lots of things are thrown out of it. And what do you see? This thing. You see handles of jugs. Please notice there's something marked on the handles. Maybe this picture would be a little bit easier to see. What are these? These are actually wine jugs. And on the wine jugs, on the handle, it's printed. What type of wine, where did it come from, all the good information. You want to know if it's Cabernet or Merlot. This is where the information will come from. It's all in Greek. And it all came from the Aegean. And if you want to understand the size of these things, I need to say many thanks to my children for posing out this picture. And this is, by the way, taken in Athens. And you see the size of these jugs when they're full size. On purpose, they are built in a way that you can fit them into the ground, into a floor that isn't made out of stone, into something that's made out of dirt. It just settles in. And then at the point, the crystals that are forming within the wine will sink in, and you'll be able to drink the wine as it is. So this is Greek wine from Greek islands. Its pieces are scattered all over. So when is this thing coming out of use? Book of Maccabees. The enemy troops in the Jerusalem fortress, our Acra, still could not go into the country to buy food, and many of them starved to death. Finally, the survivors begged Simon. Simon is Judah the Maccabee's brother. After Judah the Maccabee died, another brother took over, and eventually Simon, Shimon in Hebrew, took over, and they begged Simon for the right hand, which means what? It means something very simple. When I shake your hand, I'm using my right hand right now, right? You're using your right hand. Now we're not holding our swords anymore. This is a way of saying hello and peace. He agreed, then ordered them to leave the fortress so he could remove everything that made it impure, according to their religion. On the 23rd day of the second month in the year of the Syrian kingdom, he led his soldiers into the fortress. And how do they come in? They carried palm branches and praised God with all kinds of songs and musical instruments. When you walk around with palm branches, you usually tilt them around and play and sing. When does this happen? It actually happens in the Jewish festival of Sukkot, that you wander around with a palm branch and a few more branches together. This is actually an interesting idea, because what happens here is if you open the Greek and Roman culture, you'll find out that when you're wandering with a palm branch in your hand, you're announcing victory. So what does Simon, Shimon, the Maccabee do? He takes a Greek symbol of victory and used it against the Greeks that he just won. So no one can miss his irony as he conquers, if we're correct, the Greek Acra, taking over the city and announcing independence and victory. And of course, he decided that this should be a festival, should be held on the same day every year. Yes. We're continuing up in history, another few layers hopping up. And in this building, from the Byzantine era, they found a load of coins. Now, this picture doesn't look well, so you'd prefer this. After they were nicely cleaned, 264 mint condition gold coins, really amazingly mint condition, and they were all taken as is in the next day after they were discovered in the excavation to Dr. Gabi Bichovsky of the Antiquity Authority. She's in charge of research of ancient coins from the Byzantine period. This is the Holy Roman or Roman Christian period. She receives the lot, puts it on the table, takes a quick look, and says, I know these coins. We have lots of them. We know them. They're from the 7th century. So she quickly rummages through her coins in display, finds one of them, puts it on the table next to these and says, uh-oh, wait a minute. They're not identical. It's a close-up. The Caesar or emperor is Heraclius, and there's something wrong in these coins. She notices these two weird things. One, the name Heraclius is actually written with a spelling mistake. Not with an H, it's actually with an A, which is weird. And in addition, on the obverse, you can see Konos, which actually is the short for Constantinople, but right out of that, there's a little star. So she compares and she says, the only coins we know are these 264 coins that are all identical, all have these two things. One, a spelling mistake, and one, some addition that doesn't exist in any other coin we know from Heraclius. She takes a good look at his face, says, oh, this is the young Heraclius. He took over at 610. He became the Caesar of the Byzantine Eastern Empire. But at that moment, they're already 8 years into a world war against the Persians, the area of Iran today. And then she offered an explanation. She thinks These 264 coins discovered in the Givanti Parking Lot excavations are actually emergency mint, done not in Constantinople, but playing a game as if they were. And to make sure someone that really knows what he's doing will notice, they made a few changes, maybe on purpose, maybe because they were in a hurry. And this fund was apparently made to get the city fortified and ready and bring mercenaries and soldiers to protect the city against the Persians. She thinks these were minted in 613. Unfortunately, in the next year, in 614, the Persians conquered Jerusalem, won, and actually set it afire. So this war takes place for quite a while. There are more than 25 years of wars that in the beginning, the Sassanids, the Iranians, the Persians, as we call them, are attacking. Their king, Khosrow II, starts attacking Phocas, the emperor of Byzantium. As I said, Heraclius takes his place and loses Jerusalem. He's considered a terrible person for losing the holy city. And for the next 14 years, everything he does was getting organized, funds, army to reconquer the area of Israel and Jerusalem from the hands of the Persians. And in 628, he managed to do that. And now he felt much better, calmed down that he freed the holy city from the hands of the Persians. He didn't know that just 10 years later, the Muslims will come and take over the city and he'll lose it once more. So what we actually saw here is another glimpse into a window of the history of the city thanks to an amazing hoard of gold coins left behind from the Byzantine period.
Mm-hmm.
Something that hops us back to where I showed you the seal impression of Hezekiah. Nearby, from a Byzantine period shop, they found this fancy necklace. It wasn't really a necklace to put on someone's neck. It's huge, with a very, very fancy decoration of a menorah. Please notice that each and every one branch up on top has a little circle, which means there's a flame, there's a light on it, and every pair starts from the exact same point. Some medallion, some very, very fancy medallion of the Jewish community, maybe from that period of time, a short period that there was a Jewish community that actually lived in that area near the Temple Mount as the Persians took over, and then everything flips over twice in just 2 decades. What I just showed you in the last hour and a bit was hopping through time, hopping through different sites of Jerusalem, seeing new finds open to the public just lately, new finds that are still being excavated, still being researched and trying to understand exactly what they mean. And I think the pilgrimage road and that little temple that are still waiting to be open to the public and other areas that are already slowly visible are actually showing us the timeline of Jerusalem. So let's see what we did. We started in the Middle Bronze Age with a massive fortification that protects the Gihon Spring. Then we skipped into several different sites that touch the Iron Age. I think we saw that temple, and we saw lots of seals and seal impressions telling us of the administrative power, the amount of people that know how to read and write, what's going on in how the country and the kingdom of Judah were actually organized. Then we went to the Hellenistic period, and we saw the Seleucid Greek attack and taking over the city, and the Maccabees that are fighting back to receive their independence. Then we got to the main street of Jerusalem from the Roman era, and here I need to say something really sad. That amazing pilgrimage street was found in so good shape, apparently because it was only in use for about 40 years in total. From somewhere around year 30 Common Era, beginning of the 1st century, maybe a little bit before, all the way to year 70 when the Romans destroy Jerusalem and all the structures on the sides covered up and it's hidden and concealed. And then we skipped to the Byzantine era to another story of the history of our city. So what I did in the last, as I said, an hour and a bit, a virtual hopping through time and hopping through place, new discoveries coming up more and more in the excavation of the city of David. I have to say, as we are talking, there are 4 active excavations still taking place, and that means there are things discovered this morning that I, of course, have no idea of, I need to add, yet. So thank you very much for listening till now. And
Thank you,
we're
Warren.
totally open to questions.
Yeah. First of all, I just want to say thank you, Warren. It was so fascinating, really, really insightful. You put it together in such a fashion. It was just incredibly easy to follow and so interesting to see the timeline, you know, how you presented it. So I do want to thank you so much. I believe everybody
Thank
really,
you.
really enjoyed it.
It took me 10 more than I wanted.
Yeah, I know it was a little bit longer. And just for those of you who are still on, I think everybody's still on. I just want to point out, I put into the chat, if you enjoyed the program, please consider leaving a tip for the tour guide. And I put the place where you can do that into the chat. Greatly appreciate it. And I want to see if there's, I'm sure there's some questions. So I'd like to, if you want to unmic yourself, if there's a question that you have to ask. We have I know we're a little bit late, but we would like to take at least a couple of questions. So please.
I got a question if you don't mind.
Sure.
A couple questions. The Temple Mount is the first question. Has it always been called the Temple Mount? And the second question is, it looked like there was a lot of archaeological finds in the city of David for the first and second temple period. Are they suggesting that both temples were originally located in the city of David?
Okay, I'll start with the first question. The first time we have the term Temple Mount is actually in the book of Micah, in the 12 small prophets, and then quoted again by Jeremiah. So Temple Mount is already is synonymous with Mount Moriah, synonymous with the temple in biblical and first temple period times, and definitely into the second temple period times. There are many first temple, I'm going to the second question, many first temple and second temple finds in the city of David. It doesn't mean the temple was there. It's the period that was the city center, or the, as I mentioned, the first temple period, where the palaces and office structures stood. So that's where the city is ongoing. The temple itself, by all our traditions, is not in the city of David, actually on the hill above it, on the Temple Mount as it's known today.
As the dome of the gold dome on the Temple Mount, that didn't come into existence until after 70 AD, is that correct?
I'll make it even more, and Itamar is actually a much more better expert than I have in Muslim period, but the Dome of the Rock was built in 691 Common Era, which means more than 6 centuries after the destruction of the second temple. That's exactly what right now is marked in red. The city of David is the area just below it, topographically. That's the area where the city was born, where it started, where it grew from, but the temple itself is above the city. An interesting way of actually seeing it is in 2 Chronicles, chapter 3, in the days of Solomon. It's described as he's building the temple, and it's not in the city, it's some addition happening to the city. When we also compare the Book of Kings, we can see it's not in the original, let's say, kernel of the city, it's an addition to where it was already. So that's the additional loop in blue around the Dome of the Rock on the screen in front of you right now. 1 and 2. Thank you, Itamar.
How long would it take to walk from the city of David to the Temple Mount?
5-minute walk. It's really just a few minute walk. Today, let's say in those days, it was even easier to do. From the southern edge, it's a 5-10 minute walk. You cross most of the city of David and you're already at the foot of the Temple Mount. In those days, there were many, many gates and many entrances. Today, it's organized totally differently. In those days, we're talking about a direct entrance from the south, from the area of the city center into the Temple Mount. Again, just a few minute walk.
Perhaps, Itamar, can you zoom in and show the area from the Givanti to the southern steps so you can actually get a sense of how close it is?
Yeah, absolutely. So we zoomed into the old city, and more particularly to the southern part, where you can see the city of David over here. And the southern steps is this area. This is the Laksa Mosque, and the excavations Oren was talking about is this area. So if, again, the southern steps are right here, and he was talking about excavations that took place over here, the seal of King Hezekiah, which I had the honor to hold with my own hand a few years back. So that was a very interesting feeling, a very interesting moment. The Givanti excavations are right here, you see? We started talking about the one of
The pool.
many other
The pool.
temples in Judea. This is and if I remember correctly, it's this area over here, right?
It's a little bit up from there, but yeah, it's fine enough.
Up from the, yeah, something like that, somewhere
Yeah,
around here.
That area will be more accurate.
Yeah. So this is again the areas we were talking about. Let me just zoom out for just a second, just to make it a little more organized. We talked about that a little temple, more or less over here. We talked about the Siloam pool and the Pilgrims Road, which is underneath this road, going to it's not completely accurate, going to Givanti area, Givanti Parking Lot. It actually continues further on to Davidson Center. And we talked about these excavations, the Ophel excavations, the Southern Steps. So you can actually see everything is very much close by. Within a few minutes walk, you can get from one area to the next. But clearly you can spend good half a day just in this area to explore ancient Jerusalem. And I'll just say that I think if I want to take something from what Oren was teaching us today, and I think we should all take this as a valuable thing, monotheism was a prolonged process. Okay, it's not just Moses came to Mount Sinai, boom, everyone's believing in one abstract God. This is a very interesting concept, a abstract God that doesn't have any face or image. So clearly monotheism and centralizing the worship to that one God took place. So one abstract God and one holy place. This is something that took a lot of time. And the last thing that I will say is that there is also political context to these excavations. It's very close to Arab neighborhoods of Jerusalem. And this always brings a lot of tension, I would say, in this region. Okay, so where are the Muslims excavations just next to it? There are Muslim excavations, of course, just in this area, specifically in this area too. But I'll just say that sometimes when people are talking about the Jews are colonizer or foreigners, here what Oren just showed us is how deep the roots of the Jewish people is in this land, with the names of the kings, with the names of prophets and officers that served here from Iron Age to Hellenistic period to Roman time and even to Byzantine Persian time. So this is again, I think shows us that again, at least for me and for people who live here, I'm sure it's something of value to see, wow, our roots are really here. We really could feel ourselves natives in this country. And this is one of the most exciting thing that I show at least my travelers. And I believe we here in Travelujah, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to connect people to the land and to show how deep the connection is.
We have a question here, Itamar or Oren from Kim, about the Temple Mount during the period after destruction, but before the construction of the dome of the rock, and how was it preserved and what was there, if anything?
I'll give
Do we
a
know?
maybe Tamara will want to add.
Yeah.
So one thing is, after the destruction in the what we call the late Roman period, after the destruction of the Second Temple, there were Roman structures and a few Roman statues and inscriptions, maybe something connected with the 10th Roman Legion that was stationed in the city at the time. We know a few Roman structures, a new theater discovered lately, a bakery of the Legion discovered next to the Temple Mount. So there's something there, a few pieces of inscriptions as well. In the Byzantine period, it's a good question exactly what was going on the Temple Mount. Were there structures? Was it a huge garbage dump? Yes or no? And then it's cleared off and reorganized in the end of since the middle, basically, of the 7th century in the Muslim period, with the mosque, the Laksa Mosque, built, but beforehand, a few years, the Dome of the Rock close to the center, that is the famous monument on the Temple Mount.
Thank you. Well, thank you all. I know that next week we will be going to modern Israel and talking about the culture of the streets by looking at and learning about all the different graffiti and the language of graffiti and how that reflects the diverse society that we have here in Israel. So it's a totally different look. I hope you guys will participate. I'll be sending something about that over in the next few days. And again, if you want to go to, I'm going to put it up here again. the site where you can leave a tip if, 1 second. PayPal.me/Travelujah.
Thank you very much. Very
Thank you.
interesting, quick tour of the city of David. I've never been to Israel, but I feel like I've been there a little bit more today.
Well, you're gonna have to come, Red Baron.
That was fabulous,
you
Oren.
go.
I can't wait to
Thank
come to
you.
Yeah,
Israel.
fantastic. Very, very interesting.
Good, good. I'm really glad you guys all enjoyed it. And Oren, again, thank you so much. And
Thank you for
Itamar, thank you
inviting me.
again.
Thank you, Intamar.
I hope you guys all have a really safe, healthy, and peaceful week. And wish you a lot of strength. There's a lot going on, and stay safe.
You too.
Thank you. Bye. I'm going to stop.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye.
Yeah,
Thank you.
very good. Excellent.
Thank you.